Hello, welcome. I'm here today to do the dragon book tag. This tag was created by Elaine at Cobalt Dragon, and I was tagged by A.T. Pennington from the channel Away with Words. I will link both of their videos in the description, and I really recommend you check them both out because this is such a creative and interesting tag. All of the prompts for this tag are based on or inspired by a book that features dragons, and from that concept, we have here quite a diverse set of questions, which I will do my best to answer. So the first prompt is based on The Hobbit. Smaug loved gold and shiny things. What book or series you enjoyed features gold, shiny items, or has a shiny cover? I'm sure I've read more books that feature a dragon or a person with a hoard of gold, but the book that first came to mind for this prompt was actually The Boys in the Boat by Daniel James Brown. This is a book about the University of Washington's 8-oar crew team, which went on to represent the United States at the Berlin Olympics in 1936, and they won a gold medal there. This book touches on class and sport during the Great Depression, and it also includes some history about how the Olympics was used by Nazi Germany as a tool for propaganda. I also learned a lot about the sport of rowing from this book, and I think if you like a good old-fashioned underdog sports narrative, this is a good one for that. Prompt 2 is Dancing with Dragons. Dragons and cats go together. Do you have cats? And do you have a favorite book or series that features cats? I do have a cat. I have a little menace of a cat named Sylvie, and I think she would indeed get along great with a dragon. For books that feature cats, The Black-Tongued Thief by Christopher Buehlman has this blind, ugly cat named Bully Boy that is both a friend and a nemesis for the main character, Kinch. And I thought that was a very good use of a cat in a book I read recently, and a very funny side character cat. Prompt 3 is Dragonology. What crafts or hobbies do you enjoy? And do you have books about crafts and hobbies? I am not a very crafty person, but in terms of hobbies, I enjoy weightlifting. I've actually been running more than I've been lifting recently, but Olympic weightlifting is a hobby that I picked up during graduate school, and it's a lot of fun. I also enjoy playing board games and role-playing games. I have been playing Dungeons and Dragons with my college friend group for about 10 years now, I guess. And at this point, we probably play only once a month, but it is a joy when we play, and it's a great way to stay connected with that group of folks. I also can't say that I read books related to these hobbies very much. I consume a lot more YouTube content about my hobbies than anything, but I do have a few things related to D&D that I can talk about. The books that are most directly tied to executing on my hobby are my Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition rule books and campaign books, campaign modules, but I frankly don't refer to the campaign books very much because I haven't DM'd in years. I don't really prefer to be a DM. So mostly I refer to the physical copy I have of the player's handbook occasionally, but most of the time these rule books just sit on my shelf and declare my hobby to folks that come over. I also have on the agenda to read later this month, I have the book Tusk Love, which is a romance book in which the hero is a half-orc. And this book was imagined by one of the players of Critical Role, which is probably the most famous, or at least the first major D&D actual play web series. And that book that was imagined by the character has now been turned into a novel, so I'm excited to read that. And then the last thing in this category that came to mind was the Dragonlance novels. Dragonlance is one of many published campaign settings or like universes for D&D, and there were official novels set in that world. And I remember vividly that Dragons of Autumn Twilight was on my dad's big bookshelf of mass market fantasy and sci-fi paperbacks in my childhood home. And I'm like 90% sure that I read it, but I can't remember a single thing about it. So as I was like thinking about this prompt, it made me think like, oh, maybe I want to go back and reread that book. But the Dragonlance campaign setting didn't really have any released adventure modules for 5th edition until relatively recently, I think like post 2020. So I haven't played D&D in that setting, but it might be like an interesting thing to try. Let me know if you know about the series or the campaign setting in the comments. Prompt 4 is dragon art. Do you have a favorite artist, books featuring artists? And the answers can be about any type of artist, so musician or author or painter, etc. I don't have a lot of physical art books, but I am a fan of music and K-pop, and I believe I've mentioned before that I'm a fan of BTS, member of the BTS Army. And while there is a biography of BTS called Beyond the Story that was published or sponsored by their label, that's like a decent official summary of the trajectory of the group over their first decade. But the BTS related book that I really enjoyed as I was becoming a fan was BTS The Review by ethnomusicologist Youngdae Kim. And he more or less provides an overview of their entire discography up until 2019. And the book also contains interviews with people in the music industry who have worked with BTS. And I thought that was like a more interesting read for me, coming from a more analytic or critical framework, talking about like why BTS was successful and sort of how they approached their music making. Prompt 5 is how to live with dragons. Do you cover buy, and what are your favorite colors? What book or series did you enjoy that features dragons? I mostly don't buy books. I use my library a lot, and on the rare occasion that I do buy books, they are not usually cover buys. I can think of 2 books that I bought for myself in the past year. One was from a trusted author, and one book was something that I had already read that I picked up at an author event. So don't really do cover buys, but in terms of favorite color, my favorite color is purple. I love basically any shade of purple. In terms of what book or series did I enjoy that features dragons, Guards from the Discworld series contains a dragon that takes control of the city of Ankh-Morpork and had, to my memory, it was very funny, but it also had some real incisive commentary about political and economic systems that I really enjoyed. I'm reading Discworld in chronological order now, and I'm sure I will reread Guards when I get back to it because I have such fond memories of that book. Prompt 6 is Star Magic. Do you have a favorite constellation or a favorite astronomy book? I would say that I am not very knowledgeable about constellations or astronomy. So my favorite constellation would be Orion because I can recognize it. But I reserve the right to change my opinion after I develop a constellation fixation and learn a lot more about constellations after filming this video. I have also not read a ton about astronomy. Even when I think of the sci-fi I read, that tends to be sci-fi that is closer to home and not so much space opera sci-fi. But something that comes to mind that I did read a couple of years ago was Brief Answers to the Big Questions by Stephen Hawking. This is a posthumously published collection of essays that provides a really brief high-level overview of Hawking's thoughts on several big questions like what's inside of a black hole, and is time travel possible, and should we colonize space? And that book was quite entry-level, but I am kind of entry-level when it comes to astronomy, so I would love to know in the comments if anyone has astronomy book recommendations. And the last prompt is Chinese Horoscope, a book about astrology or astronomy. a book or series that features the movement of stars and planets. Again, I think this is a little bit out of my circle of reading, a little bit out of my circle of interests. I frankly don't know much of anything about astrology. I know that I am a Gemini. I know that I was born in the year of the rooster, but I don't really know like what traits those are associated with. I'm just frankly not really an astrology girly. But one book series that I am reading that does feature astrology that I can't seem to go one video without mentioning, I'm so sorry to all my regular viewers, is the House of Niccolo series. In fact, I would guess that the House of Niccolo in the series title is an intentional allusion to like houses in the horoscope sense, but in general, the book titles allude to different astrological signs. And in the books I've read so far, there are references to kings and businessmen consulting astrologers, and I'm curious how those astrological elements are going to continue to play out in the series. So that wraps up the Dragon book tag. These were really unusual and interesting and kind of tough questions for me to answer. In terms of tagging other people, I'm not going to tag anyone in particular, but if you feel inspired to do this tag, please consider yourself tagged and let me know so I can go watch your video. I think these questions are so interesting and I'm excited to see what connections other people have with them. As always, thank you for watching and take care. Until next time.